So this video is just going to go over the DSDN142 project documentation .x file. This is how you document your progress for this pattern project, and it is 20% of your grade. You'll see if you look at the rubric on the Project 1 hand-in, you can actually look at how the different aspects of your project count towards your final grade. You can see here the visual quality is 35 points, technical learning is 35 points, professionalism is 10 points, and your design process is 20, and that's what I'm going to focus on here. To get sort of top marks in this, your design journal should be of exceptionally high quality, showing a clear direction forward. So that basically means coming from the very little code experience you probably had coming into this course, and going through all of the steps of doing hand drawings, or however you started drawing things in code, coming up with an idea, learning things along the way, running into problems, and being able to communicate that by just talking about it, and backing it up with screenshots and citations of things that like sources for things that might have inspired your design. It also mentions commitment to and control and application of the design process, and research and analysis of inspirational material. So yeah, if you really want to think about that properly, you should be thinking about this as like a process of coming up with a concept and sort of sticking to that concept or changing it as you learn things, to kind of come up with something which every step of the way you've kind of thought about why I'm designing the thing that I'm designing, and does P5JS help me with that? Do the things that I'm learning help me with that? I'm going to just quickly jump into this file here, assuming that you've downloaded it. So when you open the file, it's going to basically have an outline of all the things that you could potentially think to write to document your progress. We're not too stressed if you haven't been doing this you haven't been keeping track of this week to week, because we didn't ask you to do it until a couple of weeks into the course. But we have been asking you to take screenshots of your work, and it's going to really help if you can show a couple of screenshots from every week that you worked on the project. So if you had a sort of idea in response to the idea of making a pattern, how can you kind of best explain that to somebody, like the sort of idea that was guiding your concept? I know that you've all kind of drawn very different things. We've kind of gone from like emojis to sort of face looking things like characters, to things in a particular design style like 8-bit or 16-bit or sort of traditional patterns. And there have also been some kind of out there things with people thinking about how they can pattern things like marbles and use different colours and things that would make a sort of very detailed overall pattern. I think the common thread there is that you were learning how to draw things with XY coordinates, and somewhere along the way you sort of had an idea of what if I drew this, and then that became what if I turned this into a pattern, and how you were kind of asked to write 5 parameters, and the kind of goal of that was to create tools for yourself that could be used to create variations on a design, and sort of think about making wallpaper design in a way that you might not if you were basically just making one image in Photoshop or something. I also quickly have a little note about the if statement, and the sort of idea for that is to have a part of your code that can be either turned off or on, or to be activated when a certain condition is met. And I just kind of added potential applications for this project as a sort of portfolio piece. It's kind of, it could be something that you make, I don't know, gift wrapping for with, or you could like print it out at like a big size and you cut it up and wrap Christmas presents in it, I guess. You could use it as a wallpaper, you could use it as a sort of background pattern for a web page. JavaScript specifically is really good at sort of being the backbone of web design. So there's all sorts of things you could kind of talk about there if you want to. And here is probably the stuff you have a good idea about, your response to the brief. We kind of really want to know your influences for the design and your intentions for sort of making what design you did. This might not have been super like you know, you thought through everything from the start. Like, I know most people probably were like, okay, how do you draw this shape in code? And oh, this kind of gives me maybe an idea for how to draw this thing with triangles, or this thing with circles or something. Maybe I could draw a smiley face if I put a couple of circles on a circle for like eyes on a face and somehow did the smile. I don't know. But being able to just talk about that and the functions that you used and the sort of problems that you knew you might encounter as the project went on, that's really cool, because it lets you put that in the context of the brief and kind of how you could see where your project would go as you kind of learned these new things and turned it into this pattern. I added here that the idea kind of changed as I used an influence sort of picture, which in this case here was I basically just directly adapted the design because I needed something to draw for the live coding session. But being able to put that in the precedent images is really helpful for us to kind of have insight into how you thought about this project. If you had kind of even ideas for colours and stuff that might have crossed your mind and at the time but you didn't think much about. Like, I know looking back I tried to draw planets and stuff at first, and that's why I sort of naturally tended towards sort of a blue background and sort of spacey colours, because that's kind of what I associate with that. And as I started to put more colours into the code, it was like there was definitely something there where like I knew that sort of gold on red works really well as a sort of royal looking design. So there's whole design movements associated with that if you can talk about in a sort of interesting way, then that's really good documentation as well. I've just got a little example here of how you could link a precedent image or a reference. I think it's really good to be able to say it was by this artist, potentially the website or the year that it was made in. I think this was 2010 or something, and then just a link to it so we can see where you got your sort of direct inspirations from. The design development, there's quite a bit there because it's just all sorts of things that happened over the course of your documentation. Here I've mostly just taken some screenshots and also some photos of hand drawings that I did. Most of these I didn't actually do these as part of the design process. I did them because I was explaining how to draw an arc or a circle or something in class. It's just a sort of idea. But you see I did have a little bit of a plan here, because with kind of the thing I was doing, the best approach was, at least in my brain, to draw it on grid paper first. And being able to see how you had an idea to draw something, even if it's an idea that didn't manifest in your final design, just add it. And if you want to know how I kind of got, like here, I didn't do it very well because it was very thrown together, but I just took a photo of the sketchbook page and like adjusted the contrast so the highlights were really bright and the shadows were really dark. So it was kind of very clear and readable, because it can be kind of hard to read sometimes if you're taking a photo of just a sketchbook or something. And then I just sent the pictures to my school OneDrive and downloaded them onto my computer. And here was where I kind of dedicated a page to sort of experiments with colours and stuff. Like initially I had this idea to use 2 different colours. That turned into having 2 different, entirely almost different colour themes. And here was sort of when I was experimenting with patterns and stuff. I think just showing anything like screenshots you took that didn't end up becoming one of your 9 variants or anything like that, that kind of made you think or maybe reconsider something, or a problem you had when you're doing your coding. Like here I definitely didn't want this concept, but it kind of influenced the idea of overlapping cells by having them at different sizes, which is something which can make really interesting patterns when you have parts of a shape overlapping in some ways, but also like negative space and space between your glyph is being used. So you've got sort of areas of parts where it overlaps more, so it's got this sort of contrast. And here was kind of just some experiments with mixing the different colours together, which ultimately led to the variants that you kind of settle on. Then there's a part on written material, which is about the lecture material, which not much is expected of you because you can choose entirely to like not engage with the sort of AI tools and stuff. As just an example of something you could put in, I took the design at one point in the live coding session to ask it to rearrange some of the elements of it. Like I had it move these little circles around, and it did it in quite an interesting way. So to add the caption to this picture here, I right clicked on it and went insert caption, and then wrote out whatever this was. And it adds a little caption to your image. And there in the text I referred to it when I was like, talking about it and reflecting on it. And yeah, I had like ethical notes on how I used AI and stuff, because it is something I was kind of thinking about at the time, and I think it's interesting if you can tell us, if you have anything that you think it affected how you went about the design process, whether it helped or like maybe had a potential for helping but you didn't quite know how you'd be able to use it for this project. That's all interesting stuff. And the reflection overall, that's kind of, if you go back to your original goal for the project, if you had like a sort of concept, or like something that you wanted to, a drawing of something that you wanted to turn into a pattern in an interesting way, something you wanted to do in code that you kind of had as like a goal in your mind, did you achieve that, and to what extent did you achieve that, and what extent did it kind of just result in a lot of really stressful, probably problem solving and rewriting your code a million times and stuff like that. It's kind of a little moment for you to say, yeah, actually I'm really happy with how this aspect of the design turned out, but if I had more time, or I learned this concept sooner or something like that, things might have gone better. And there's definitely, I know you've just finished this project and I don't want to have you being too critical on it, but there's always like, you're always going to look at your past work and be like, this could have been better in this way. So there's a little bit of space for you there if you want to do that, but don't be too hard on yourself, because this was a very tough project and I'm glad you all got through it. And the other thing is, for your 9 variants, you should be copying the parameters and putting them in your settings.txt file, and you should check the last announcement I posted for how to do that, but I think it's also in if you look at settings.txt in your project file, there's instructions for that in there too.